Assalamu alaikum.
I'm still in.
You can join. Alhamdulillah, it's been a while. It's good to have you guys join us again. Today we're interviewing Ustad Daniel Haqiqatjou, who has a pretty big following on Facebook and has been causing much content. Very important topics, inshallah, that are a benefit to all of us. Bismillah, waiting on him to join us. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Alhamdulillah, excellent. So, Ustad, I wanna give you or give them an introduction about you, and if there's anything I say you want to change or edit or add afterwards, you're free to do so, of course. Ustad Daniel Haqiqatjou is the president, the founder, and the head of IslamSkeptic, and from what I understand, the purpose of it is to empower young Muslims, to give them the confidence and courage to recognize that we need to deconstruct the deconstruction. That we're attacked from all different angles, from many different intellectual traditions, lifestyles, cultures that are contrary to our faith and to our tradition. And he wants people to understand and to equip them with the tools to do so, to recognize that we live in modern times and we don't have to be brainwashed by every ism and schism, to go with every flow, and just to basically to be confident in our faith. Ustad, what do you think? Was that good?
Yeah, and also IslamSkeptic.com, and then also Alasna Institute. Alasna Institute is an online learning platform where we have courses for those Muslims who want to go more in depth in trying to strengthen their faith and understand how Islam deals with these challenges to our faith. The Alasna Institute is a platform that we have courses dedicated to those topics.
Perfect. Okay, Ustad, let's start off with possibly the topic that most comes up in your posts, right? Alhamdulillah, I've been following you for a number of years, read maybe a few hundred posts, benefited a lot from the topic of atheism, right? The neo-atheist movement. What is all that about?
So new atheists really arose after 9/11, and they are different from older atheists in that they use certain kinds of arguments, and they have a real animosity towards Muslims and Islam. And so you have figures like Sam Harris or Richard Dawkins, who is an Oxford biologist. And they basically, the whole argument is that religion is obsolete. All religion does is create blind followers who are not willing to listen to reason, not willing to follow science. So they have these kinds of very standard cliched arguments that they use against all religions, but in particular Islam. They view Islam as being more barbaric, being more irrational. So it started, I would say the movement started about 2004, the New Atheist movement, and that was with the publication of Sam Harris's book on atheism. And then now in 2020, it's kind of petered out. I don't think like many people are really paying attention to the New Atheists. And a reason being, it became really ugly, the way that they would constantly attack Muslims, and many of them were really pro-war, like Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens was another one of these guys, Richard Dawkins, that were very pro-war. They wanted America and the entire world to attack Iraq on what we now know was pretty obvious at the time, was completely false pretenses. So people saw that these guys are hypocrites. They supposedly are about Enlightenment values and peace or whatever, but they're advocating torturing Muslims, they're advocating bombing. Sam Harris said we have to nuke Mecca. Like, just have that as a deterrent, because Muslims are so barbaric. Yeah, well, we have to keep them in.
The ends justify the means, basically, right?
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, they're not really that important. I think a bigger threat to Muslim youth is not new atheism. New atheism is old news. It's died. But really, you have a problem of what some call intellectual apostasy or intellectual atheism. And this idea is you're still calling yourself a Muslim, but you act and you behave and you think as if you're not a Muslim.
Interesting.
Right? So you might think that like a Muslim is supposed to use the Quran, is supposed to use the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the model for their life. And how do you think, how do you behave? It's not, being Muslim is just not a label, like a name, oh, I'm Muslim, or like a cultural identity. Yeah, it actually should inform like how you live your life and how you think. But if your entire thought process is dictated by other ideologies, then this is intellectual apostasy.
Our Islam has been corrupted by and large. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's a kind of corruption, but it's very subtle because the people think, these Muslims think that they're Muslim, practicing Muslim even. They pray 5 times a day, like the Muslim sister. She will pray 5 times a day. She'll have the hijab, but she'll still say things like, we should have the freedom to do whatever we want, and no one has the right to tell me how to behave, not even God, right? Everyone has to have complete and maximum freedom and all of this nonsense. So what is, these terms are coming from an overall ideology of liberalism, which is a type, it's not considered a religion, but it's a type of religion because, again, it affects, it's a worldview. It affects the way you think, it affects the way you behave. So it doesn't have, it's a religion by another name, but I think that's more of a threat to Muslim faith than just plain atheism.
Which brings us to our next, and that was the next question I was going to ask you. How about the other isms in addition to atheism, which is liberalism, secularism, feminism? Please tell us.
Yeah, so all of these isms are related. They arise within Europe and America within the past 300 years. And the basic idea is that we don't need God and we don't need scripture or revelation to understand what is right and wrong. All that we need to live our lives is reason and science. Reason and science. And these two have all the answers for how to live. And if we want to progress as a civilization, we have to stick to reason and science. If we are religious, that will hold us back. So this is the core of modernism, and this is the core of these ideologies. And and this leads to atheism. So progressivism. It's constant. We are constantly progressing as a human race.
The past is just horrendous. You don't even look. There's nothing to learn from them. You go back all throughout history. We were savages. We oppressed our women. We hated everyone who wasn't us. The other, and all religions were in the past. So therefore, they all were like the worst. They're like the biggest example of us oppressing anyone that wasn't looking like us or from our tribe or nation. And we use religion to oppress every woman and to oppress every minority, to oppress everyone weaker. Not saying that the Prophet ﷺ, I know that Muslims tend to do this, and I'm sure you're very critical of this. We shouldn't say everyone's saying this. No, Islam is the complete opposite, like getting overly emotional, because it's not always true. But in this case, it is accurate to say the Prophet ﷺ was basically the opposite of that. He was in a society that was oppressive, and he deconstructed, or he dismantled oppressive systems. Is that fair, or is that too?
Yeah, because there are different types of oppression. Exactly. There is racial oppression, which Islam completely banished very explicitly from the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is the oppression of kufr and disbelief, that you do not recognize and you turn your back to your Creator. And this is the cause. This is the ultimate injustice and the cause of so much oppression. So Islam comes and completely dismantles those systems. But liberalism, this idea that you mentioned it so well, that we don't look at the past, all the people of the past were barbaric, we have to look forward, we have to be on the right side of history. That's a very dangerous ideology for Muslims. Why? Because our entire religion is based on the past. We follow revelation, which came in the past. We follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who lived in the past, and his sunnah, his example. So this progressive mindset, it's not considered to be a religion, but it's a mindset, a worldview that very subtly but very strongly dismantles or corrupts someone's faith in Islam.
Awesome. So I also want to add, all the prophets lived in the past, right? It's not just the Prophet, all the prophets lived in the past.
Exactly.
So all the different trials and all the different, not trials and errors, but all the trials that the prophets went through, all the suffering they went on behalf of their people, just to help them recognize the truth about Allah and about the injustice of our societies. All that happened in the past. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot as humanity by cutting ourselves off from the prophets. Is that fair?
Well, that's obvious. As Muslims, we know this, that you're cutting yourself off. But even non-Muslims have this problem. Why? Because they cut off the entirety of the past. And that's an issue, because if you are, let's say, a patriotic American, like we see this right now, the founding fathers, right, or all of the past presidents, essentially, would be considered by today's standards as intolerant, as racist. I mean, some of them were very clear racist. Abraham Lincoln was a white supremacist. Abraham Lincoln has many statements, even though he is part of the emancipation in terms of ending, quote unquote, ending chattel slavery. But he was a white supremacist, saying that the white man is superior to the black man. But even think about homophobia, right? Because according to those standards of LGBT that we have today, or that are being imposed today, even someone like Barack Obama, even Hillary Clinton, they were opposed to many LGBT rights, and they said very clearly that as early as 2010, 2013, that marriage is between a man and a woman. So it's not even 10 years that the standards have changed, and all of those figures, they're still alive and well, and for some reason are seen as heroes. They're considered intolerant. They would be considered intolerant, homophobic, bigoted. These are the kinds of contradictions that people are dealing with today. It's creating cognitive dissonance.
Good. And what do you think 10 years from now? Do you think we're gonna have the same standards of morality in our society, or do you think it'll probably be different? If 10 years ago we're like, that's nonsense, that's the past, like prehistoric times 10 years ago, what do you think about 10 years from now? What can we predict? Like, what do you think it'll look like?
I think there are going to continue to be new minority groups that crop up, new communities that are considered disenfranchised. I think this is an endless process if today's identity politics continues, and we're already seeing it. There are people who claim that, look, I'm not a human being, I'm an animal. Like, I'm a dog, or I'm a cat, or I have this other identity, and I should have the freedom to choose to be a dog. And as technology progresses, like surgeries could be, there are surgeries now that you can change your face, you can sharpen your teeth to get you more canine-like or animal-like, and people are doing it. People are actually doing this. They're going through these kinds of surgeries, and they're already demanding respect. And this kind of group, they've been called otherkins, like they're trans species, basically. So this is going to be the next wave, probably. And you think it's bizarre though, but I was teaching a class about 2 years ago where one of the students said that, he was a high school student, he said, actually in my high school there is a kid who says that he's a dog, and he walks through the halls on all fours, and he barks, he doesn't speak, and the teachers are required to treat him like a dog, because otherwise that would be intolerance and bigotry. So, we might laugh at it now, but in 10 years, this might be trans-species phobic, right?
Do you think this is the problem, or this is like a symptom, or this is what's going on here? Like,
this is the core of liberalism. Liberalism as a philosophy. When we talk about liberalism, I'm talking about the philosophy of liberalism, which is, to define it, the idea that all goodness and value comes from maximizing freedom, and whatever contradicts freedom and liberty is oppressive. So this kind of philosophy really pushes individualism. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or any other standards that people have. What matters is you as an individual and what you desire, what you want to do, and what the choices that you make. And anything that opposes that or restricts that is evil, and is evil, intolerant, bigoted. So it leads people to want to fulfill their desires. We know as Muslims, our shahawat or our ahwa, our hawa, these kinds of whims and desires that are so destructive, lusts are so destructive for the human being, but you have an entire philosophy that champions those lusts and desires, so it's extremely destructive, and people are suffering from it. I mean, if in every aspect, you have youth who don't even know if they're male or female. Like, that's how confused they've become. And imagine, like, and it's ripping their families apart. It's ripping even communities apart. And it makes sense, because we're created as human beings, that human beings have certain features, like we're either male or female. You can't start changing that and disrupting that. It's going to cause pain. It's going to cause suffering. It's going to cause confusion. But the liberal mindset says that that doesn't matter. All of that stuff doesn't matter as long as the individual's right to choose is preserved. That is the most important thing. It's false. Sorry, go ahead.
Which is it's very faulty because if you hypothetically you're doing something that you feel is the best for you, it probably isn't, but it's the best for you, but it hurts everyone around you, but that's fine because it's about you. But you hurting everyone around you hurts you indirectly because you are going to be surrounded. We're not human beings are incapable of being 100% independent, right? Is that accurate? We are in need of everyone around us. So sometimes helping everyone else, even if you're sacrificing the short term, long term, you're making a better environment, community, family for yourself. Like the example of the family, subhanAllah, families, I think you might agree on this, but when the left and right both agree on something, it's almost always going to be like something worth like looking into. Is that fair? Because the left and right seem to, every day they disagree on more and more. They both strongly agree, and I'm talking about in America and Europe, left and right, like politics, they both strongly agree that families are like, it's like the end of families, the end of marriage. So then you know there's a crisis. Is that accurate? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure. There is a crisis because think about marriage. Like in a marriage, why is the divorce rate going through the roof? Because in a marriage, it's two people. You have to be able to sacrifice your own desires and your own interests for the other person. That will restrict your individual autonomy, like what you want to do. And a lot of people, they've been conditioned with this nafsi, me mentality. They're not going to be able to cope within a marriage, and you see a lot of youth, even Muslim youth, unfortunately, who fall into that mindset, and it could lead to divorce. But what you're saying about, yeah, is it actually, it's going to harm you in the long run, because if you can't get married, if you can't have someone to sacrifice for, to love, to put above yourself, that's a huge loss for you in the long term. Also in the short term. It causes a lot of problems, because our nature, again, we're created by Allah to be a certain way, and Islam is perfectly designed to match with our nature and who we are. And human beings actually are not naturally individualistic. Naturally, we're not, oh, it's only about me. Naturally, we want to help others. We want to sacrifice for our family. We want to sacrifice for children. That's something that we need as human beings, but liberalism throws that all out and says, no, the individual is only important.
Building up a family and then building up finding your mate, having kids, building up a family, building up a tribe, building up nations, and cooperating with other nations, that's human nature, right? That's part of fitrah. And so our deen has something to say about every level. Is that accurate?
Exactly.
In modern times, they speak about. I'm sure you know this, but especially on like in internet culture, like in YouTube, especially, people talk about like my tribe. Somebody, let's say, has 100,000 followers on YouTube or 1 million or whatever. They're known for, let's say, it's a man known for fitness, for example. But he has a bunch of young boys that watch him and they want to learn about masculinity and maleness. I'm actually thinking of someone particularly. But anyway, people like that, they talk about like my tribe. Not really, and it's kind of a joke. It's not literally a tribe. You might not even meet these people. They're all over the world. But it's actually interesting because as like the whole world seems to be more and more plugged into the internet, so this tribe is actually real in many ways. Like if where you shop and who you buy and who you listen to intellectually and culturally, and how you spend your time and the people you follow, like these people are like modern prophets. I don't know if you want to speak about this. I know I didn't ask you, but like the future of like internet culture and tribes, if you want to speak about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there is this human nature that you do want to make connection, but the connections that we are meant to have with family and community, organic around us, that exists in many parts of the world that haven't been destroyed by modernism and liberalism. If you take all of that away, then you're left with these individuals by themselves, right? Living alone, going to work, waking up alone, going to work in an office, in a cubicle, doing their job, then going back home and sitting in front of Netflix ordering takeout. Is that all that human existence is meant to be? And then if you want some kind of human connection, just like you order food on your phone, you order Tinder or you order someone to come sleep with over your phone. This is the reality that's been constructed for us, and people are internally, they have a feeling that this is not the way we're supposed to live, and they haven't identified the source of the problem. They haven't understood the source, and they don't know the solution. The solution is Islam. But they try to use these substitutes, these cheap substitutes, to give them feeling, to help their mental health. So like you're saying, online tribes, like, oh, I feel like I'm part of a group now. It's just
we're wearing the same t-shirt, maybe.
yeah, we're all wearing the same t-shirt. We like have memes that we share. Like this has become the substitute for civilization.
We have core values: love, respect. Everyone believes in love and respect, and like it's contextless.
Exactly.
But people are trying to fill the void of which can only be filled by Allah, who created the void in our hearts. Yeah.
Exactly.
But let's so yeah, the next point, and I guess we naturally transitioned into tell us about marriage. What's your advice to someone who's married? I've actually spoken about it to a number of my friends and to the high school kids that look up to me, alhamdulillah, that I have that role in the community. But I also am not married, so I know that I can say like, marriage is part of our deen, completely other. I can say things like that. I think an ayah or hadith, or like, say, guys, there's a problem around the world. I'm listening to the experts saying there's a marriage crisis. I can say these things. But then if you're not married, you really can't do much or say much, and you can't really be part of the solution as much as I would like to. So someone who's been married for how many years, if you don't mind me asking?
11.
11, mashallah. And you have, I think, two kids? 3?
4. 4.
Mashallah. I think I'm at 2. Okay, mashallah. Allah bless you and protect you. What do you think? Are you going 4 down, 8 more to go, or what?
I don't know about that. We'll see.
Have you ever seen the movie Cheaper by the Dozen? Maybe you don't watch
no.
movies, forgive me, but you never. Okay, it's kind of when I was a kid. It's kind of cute. It's like 12 kids, and it's like family that's like very chaotic, and they all play sports. And anyway, it's drama and stuff. But it's like John, Michael, Sally. It's a white family in the suburbs, But so since I watched that, I love kids. I don't know you, director. Maybe you've seen me around kids. But when I talk to somebody about marriage, I'm like, listen, I want to tell them like in a nice way that I really like kids. So I'll be like, listen, I want the same thing like Cheaper by the Dozen, but I want them to be like Khalid, Walid, Salah, Fatima. And people so far people have run the other way, and I'm like, yo, I don't mean literally 12, but like I love kids. Anyway, so alhamdulillah, so mashallah, 4 kids. May Allah bless you and protect your family. You have, and you've been married for a while, and I believe you and your wife have taken on the role that you would like to, give people advice in terms of marriage. So what's your advice for us?
For someone who is married right now, or someone who wants to get married?
Yeah, no, for the young, teenagers, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds that are not married. What the Muslim community.
If you're not married, I guess the most important thing is what Islam offers in terms of marriage is so much superior and so much better and so much more fulfilling than what the status quo and the modern world and American or Western culture offers you. It's so much better, and I hear so many sad stories of girls and boys, they're dating, something happens, they're constantly in emotional turmoil. They don't know, like, okay, is this person committed to me? Because the human heart naturally wants to attach to someone and be with someone in a committed relationship. And that's what marriage is. But everything within the modern world speaks against that. No, commitment is bad. Like, you just want to be independent, just be by yourself. So this causes a lot of cognitive dissonance. It causes depression. It causes even suicide. So that's one side of it. And then Islam offers a solution. It's just a matter of Muslim parents and community making it easier for youth to get married and to create these loving families. And I think that teenagers, if you show that you're mature and that you are doing well in school and you're taking life seriously, there's no reason why you shouldn't be beginning the marriage search to find someone to marry and to be with. Why not? And when my kids, inshallah, are in the age of 16, 17, 18, I definitely want to help them to get married and to start and find someone who is like-minded and a family who's like-minded so they can get married and be happy and engage in that very important stage of life. Like, we spend so much time on career and job. Okay, fine. That's important. That's an important part of life. But what time and attention and resources are spending to marriage and family? That's an even bigger, more important part of life. And we spend no time on it in many parts of the Muslim world.
Okay, Ustad, there's a growing idea, and it's as usual, if it's around us in society, it's going to affect every community, including the Muslim community, unfortunately. But if you talk to a lot of high school kids today, a lot of college kids today, and I've had these conversations, they will say, if not directly maybe, but indirectly, they'll absorb the idea around us that the very 21st century idea, I believe even in the US, is very new, maybe just 1 generation old, maybe 2 generations, anyway, maybe the 60s onwards, but really very new, that marriage is optional, or even, in fact, not even a good option. How do you respond to that, right? That it was this ancient institution, that it's a religious, and religion is human made, So it's a human-made institution, right? Marriage, and maybe it had its role in the past. It was probably oppressive in the past. Regardless, obviously people have different views, but we're obviously generalizing. But it was something of the past. It was an institution that maybe served its purpose, or it was an oppressive institution. And now, because we have all the freedom and all the choices, we definitely shouldn't choose marriage. Why would you choose this institution? And yes, it's natural, man, woman, love, etc. Fine, but you find a couple, you like her, she likes you, so on. You just live together, and or another way to say the same thing is, why should the state be involved in my life? Why should they be in my bedroom? Why should they be between me and my wife? Why should they be part of every contract and be part of, why do you have to make a business and politics out of everything? Why does the state have to interfere in our private life? Which also we get that they're right on that, from the point of view that the state in America and around the world today is very intrusive into our lives in many different ways. Muslims know this very well. But yeah, how would you respond to that notion of that?
Wait, Muslims are saying this or non-Muslims?
Well, I don't think so. This is kind of a society that we're around, but Muslim community absorbs just like everything else.
Yeah. So I would say that. Wait, can you see me or hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. So I would say that when it comes to Islam, marriage is between the man, the woman, and her family, basically her father, and Allah. Those are the parties concerned, and there are witnesses as well. So there's a community component. There's no state or government that has to impose or be involved. And so this is a union that Allah blesses and that He sanctions. It has nothing to do with the state. As far as what's happening today in this present world where everything is state-centric, then yeah, it becomes a problem when the state can determine certain things and restrict certain kinds of marriage. For example, polygamy is banned or is illegal. But these downsides that are brought up with marriage, that this is man-made, marriage is a man-made institution, that's completely nonsense, because again, it's human nature. Human nature is actually, when we look at many different cultures, they have certain characteristics. So marriage is one of these universal aspects of many cultures. Polygamy actually is a universal aspect of many cultures, and patriarchy. So patriarchy, where there's a man at the head of the household, this is something standard that's found in every single culture. So it's not man-made. You can't say that it's man-made if it's so universal.
So marriage and family is a divinely inspired institution. Is that fair?
Is a what inspired institution?
It's a divinely inspired institution, or divinely mandated institution, right? It's not a choice. Muslims,
yeah.
Because the problem is, that's how we started with atheism. That's why I wanted to start with atheism. I feel like it kind of connects all the rest. Like, if you don't believe in Allah, everything else falls, right? Your view on gender, race, like it's the crux that holds everything together. So those who are Muslims who believe in Allah, then they should know that just because everyone says it's an option, the dating is okay, the hooking up is a 21st century idea of seeing relationships in a very different way, that's wrong, because marriage. Forget about the history of men oppressing women and stuff. I forget it. There's plenty of history of men oppressing women today. And marriage comes back from Allah. It wasn't a certain men or a group of men or a certain society or a certain place or time that came up with it. It's from Allah, and it's absolutely required as a Muslim. So if you believe in Allah, the problem is people that don't believe in Allah, then of course marriage and everything else goes out the window, which is why we started with atheism. But alhamdulillah. Should we transition to another topic? Can we go on to another question, or do you want to say anything else about marriage?
Sure. No, go ahead. Keep it moving. Sure. But you're kind of breaking up. I don't know if it's my connection or your connection.
Yeah, so I did see that. But from me, both of us are very crystal clear, video and audio. So I don't know. I see myself perfectly. I see you perfectly. And it's never happened on my end.
You're breaking up for me, and then someone said in the comments that you're breaking up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm using, quote unquote, the world's best home internet, right? I don't know what else I can do, Yanni.
Yeah.
Should I? Okay, we end this and we do a part 2. Like, let's go back in and see if it's better.
Now it's better. Now it's better.
Okay.
I don't know why. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll move to another topic.
Yeah. So it is related to marriage. I mean, Abdullah, you're breaking up still. It takes 10 seconds. We jump out, we come back in. Is that okay?
Well, now it's fine. I think it's fine now.
Okay. Ustad, one of the biggest elephants in the room today, and I guess we've talked about a number, and there are plenty of others as well. But one of the biggest elephants in the room that you rarely hear from in khutbahs, you rarely hear from, even on YouTube videos, like from the younger and up-and-coming imams and leaders of our community who are addressing things through YouTube and so on, and kind of expanded, because the masajid, sometimes they have like certain number of topics that they just circle through, but YouTube has kind of opened it up to people all over the world. But still, you rarely hear people speak about, and I heard you say it in a very frank way, and it was very beautiful and it was different, speak about pornography. So tell us about what inspired you to make that video on Facebook that I saw maybe about, I think it was Ramadan or like about a month ago. And then how did you do that research? And then also what's your advice on the topic?
Yeah, so the research was based on this article that I came across. It's in a psychological academic journal, but basically these researchers, they titled the article "Seeing is Not Believing." And the point that they made is that pornography usage can actually decrease your faith. It can actually decrease your level of commitment to religion. It decreases your willingness to go pray. It reduces your sense of feeling closeness to God. And this is something that it should be obvious to Muslims, but it was interesting how, because any sin that you commit, it creates a dark spot on your heart. And you have to engage in istighfar and tawbah and remove that and clean that spot. But this is now academic research that was basically recognizing the fundamental truth that Muslims have always known. So that inspired me. And one of the things that, when I look at the statistics, you have a state in the U.S., Arizona, who has declared pornography a public health crisis. Officially in the state. And why is this? Because they recognize that pornography usage has creates this kind of addiction because of dopamine that's released in the brain. So it creates addiction pathways that are similar to cocaine and heroin and other hard drugs. So people become addicted, even with like they're just exposed to it randomly when they're a young kid, and then suddenly they fall into this addiction. And imagine, like, with heroin and hard drugs, they're dangerous, but they're also hard to access. And they're illegal. But with pornography, it's not difficult to access. It's right there on the phone, Wi-Fi connection. So you have something that's extremely addictive, something that causes depression, something that can cause mood disorders, and it has the capacity to decrease your faith, and it's free and accessible. So this makes it a very potent combination, and that's what inspired me to make like the very short video that I did. And Muslims need to be aware of this is the reality. I think that Muslim men and men in general are the victims of this, and men are not seen as victims. But when you have this kind of drug, that imagine like if there were heroin dealers that are just going to elementary schools and handing out free heroin like candy, or cocaine like free candy, we would say that this is abusing the children, this is abusing men, and it's getting them addicted to this drug. But there's no sympathy. Like, there's no sympathy for men. There's no concern about how to systematically address this. It's almost as if the powers that be want us to be addicted, want us to be hooked onto pornography, so that we don't think about other things. We leave religion. We leave concern for doing good, creating a world filled with justice. It's like a drug just to take us out of the picture, basically.
Spiritual slavery, is that fair?
Yeah, slavery, exactly. Cultural slavery, spiritual slavery, mental slavery.
Psychological slavery, mental slavery. If Malcolm X was here today, what would he say? Some of you still have the slave mindset. Some of you are still enslaved. And he said that before a world of cocaine, before a world of pornography. Now there was drugs and alcohol. So yeah, it's interesting that he probably would have said that that's also one of the devil's poisons.
Yeah,
right?
He would have. He wasn't.
Some of you are still enslaved. Sorry, go ahead.
In his time, there wasn't even the crack epidemic.
That's true. So, that was after. Some would say that timeline was because the Nation of Islam and because of his movement, the Black Muslim movement was so successful. So then they purposely introduced cocaine to the community.
Absolutely, that's a historical fact.
Yeah. And you did mention that video on Facebook. I don't know if I thought you would bring it up. You didn't mention it directly. The pornography is similar in that it's a tool used by
elites. Oh, you mean
on Facebook? That's all you said.
Oh, what did I say? I don't remember.
You said what you said was very common among Palestinians, that anywhere in the world we go, I'm not saying it's wrong, anywhere we go, any problem we see, it's the Zionists. You said it's the Zionists who pornography. I mean, I believe it.
No,
But
well,
yeah,
I mean, look at the people who are behind the industry, and this is something that even Israeli news outlets admit that the IDF used pornography as a weapon against Palestinians when they were sieging. I think it was Gaza or Ramallah. So the Palestinians were locked in their homes, they were locked down, and the only source of news was Palestinian news channels. But Israel overtook and hacked those broadcasts and started distributing pornography as a weapon against the Palestinians. So Israel has a history of using pornography as a weapon. And as far as the West, if you look at who's really behind the pornography industry, I'll leave it to people's research. Yeah. But it's a very pro-Zionist industry. It's a very and anti-Palestinian. Like you'll have these moguls of pornography who will denounce Palestine, and they'll be very pro-Zionist. So make your own conclusions.
I got you. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi said something about this. Obviously, it wasn't pornography at that time, but he said something about the idea of like corrupting the youth and about any related issue of like gender interactions and sexual dynamics, etc., and that how it like weakens the soldiers. Is there a quote something like that that seems relevant? Something.
Yeah. I think off the top of my head, I think he said that if you want to destroy a nation, just fill it with sexual, lust and deviance and shamelessness, where people are no longer lower the gaze. They just indulge in all of these lusts. And this is not something that only Muslims have recognized or Muslims know. It's something very clear in history. The rise and fall of civilizations. When you start engaging in decadence and lusts and unbridled individualism, then that's when your society is going to crash.
I just realized something that, I mean, I don't know if this is like, anyway, I noticed that liberalism, secularism, etc., the left in America, one of the things that they, we know, of course, that it's every person basically has their own worldview, and that there's plenty of like, different movements and splinters, etc., but there are some things that are in common. But one of the most controversial, or one of the things that they strongly disagree on is pornography. That's accurate, right? There's different movements that are like very pro, very anti, both within the same philosophical framework, but also the Palestinian, quote-unquote, Palestinian-Israeli conflict, really the occupation of Palestine, is also an issue that the left is split on, right?
The left, yeah, they are, because the establishment.
Go ahead.
Right, exactly. The establishment Democrats are pro-Israel, so they're progressive except Israel. They're progressive except Palestine.
Yeah, I think the principles aren't applied. Right? The same principles for like Black Lives Matter movement and justice for racial justice and other issues, Latinos, this and that, Muslims, Islamophobia, quote unquote, Islamophobia, all these things should naturally, someone with that worldview should naturally also side with Palestine. It should be super clear, right? But yeah, but they don't, right? Or they're split on this issue. But then on pornography, if it's about woman empowerment and it's women's rights, it's about respect and dignity for a woman. It should be clearly anti-pornography. But plenty of them it's like split. They're for pornography, but like that's liberation for women. Like that's oppression of women. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that these two issues they're both split on. But
that's an interesting point. I mean, it's something with pornography. I think that boys and men are the primary target and the primary victims of that. But now women are in danger too, and girls are in danger too. And there was always this phenomenon of sexting, basically taking naked pictures, and girls doing that. You have Instagram and social media that feeds this kind of a woman's desire. Like if men have the lust to want to look and consume, then women have the lust to want to show themselves and display their beauty. And the internet so far in pornography has catered to the lusts of men, but now increasingly it's catering to the lusts of girls and women too, because you have sites, and this was in the news, sites called OnlyFans or something like this, where you can create basically your own pornography channel and post, and then you can get fans to subscribe, and pay money to get naked pictures and videos of you. So girls can now be independent and take advantage of this kind of online marketplace that's been created. So who's behind these kinds of satanic technology. Like, is this really what society needs? Is for women to be empowered to sell their bodies, essentially to be online prostitutes? This is like the new way, like the new technology that is affecting, unfortunately, some of these youth.
People find it hard to see that the pornographic industry is very oppressive to women. It should be so obvious.
Well, like I said, it's oppressive to the main victim has always been men.
Well, no, but I meant okay.
Now,
yeah, consuming. Yeah, but I'm talking about something slightly different. I'm saying I agree that that men are probably the vast majority of the viewership, and that they're victims even if they don't see it. Yes, and the issues it has on them and their families. No, I'm saying, but the industry. So not the content, not the view. I'm saying that the industry itself of using the woman for like paying them to do that stuff. That's oppressing them because
they can choose not to do that.
yeah, but okay, but is it that simple? Because I'm sure if I should do more research. I'm maybe arguing from ignorance, but I felt if I did more research, I'd find that for every, let's say, 100 people that end up becoming these celebrity, famous, they make $1 million a year or whatever. I'm sure some of them they're celebrities, so they're making a lot of money. Their social media followings are big, right? Like they're kind of seen as like, oh, just like athletes and musicians, like people trying to normalize it, right? But anyway, that they're successful in that industry. But for every 100 of them, how about the million, thousands or hundreds of thousands of women around the world that are traded, slave trades, and they're they're shipped in through Houston, through Galveston, and they're taken to places, and all sorts of stuff that are done to them. Like, isn't that?
No, there's trafficking. Okay, that's definitely abuse.
They're not related. Those two industries
they
are
might
related.
be related. They might be related, right? But I'm saying that as a whole, the industry, many of the participants, because it's illegal. Like, how could the industry make the billions of dollars that it does and be normalized if most of what's going on is completely illegal and is involving trafficking? There is trafficking, I'm not denying that, but the people who are involved with the majority of it, where the actual money is, yeah, there's black market stuff, but that's not the main economics. Like, that's not the main marketplace. All of the rest is, by choice. Is it a free choice? I don't know. If you're being bombarded by this message that pornography is natural and it's wonderful, and you're a girl and you've been indoctrinated to want to constantly beautify yourself and be sexy and go on Instagram, then yeah, you are being groomed in a certain way. You're groomed by the entire culture, and you can be considered a victim in that sense. But as far as you're making the choice to do that, okay, you're making the choice. The person who is consuming it is also making the choice. So I think there's victimization on both sides.
So our society is oppressing women to the extent that they see it as a normal business transaction that could be the best thing for them, the best way for them to feed themselves and their families. So it is oppression, but maybe it's level 2. It's like indirect.
Maybe,
yeah. That contract could be unfair. Somebody, Sally goes and signs the contract, and it's legal and fair, and she gets a good chunk of money for what? But our society, so our society is oppressive to the point that that's seen as a good business transaction. That's a good thing, maybe the best thing for that individual. She might say, that's the best from working at Shell, working on ExxonMobil, working on Google, Facebook, whatever, working in this industry, working at this restaurant, working at this, home store, this whatever, Walmart. I'm going to work at this place. I was about to say best bang for your buck. Astaghfirullah. The best value for my time and effort, etc., and talent. Yes, subhanAllah. This is an oppressive society, man.
No, yeah, that's the oppression of kufr, because there's no solution to it. They're a society supposedly of reason, but really it's not reason. It's just a society of lust. It's a society of shahwa. And if you're in that kind of society, that's oppressive. You're going to oppress yourself. You're going to oppress others. And there is no solution. They can't think like, because you wouldn't be able to know that, if we have this legal institution of pornography and you're selling it and you're creating technology to distribute it, what is going to be the consequence 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? How is this going to affect society? They couldn't anticipate any of that based on their reason and their advanced understanding and science and technology. No, so they completely went down that path, and it's led to all this destruction and harm and pain. So that shows you that you need guidance, you need revelation, you need a lighthouse to guide you to what's right and wrong, and you're not going to be able to anticipate things that the Creator knows. Allah knows when He commands us to lower the gaze, not engage in khalwa, not to engage in zina. You might not understand, and I might not understand the deeper wisdom of that and how it can lead to problems down the line, but Allah knows, and that's why He commanded you to do this or that and prohibited you from this or that.
We need objective morality and objective truth. Yeah.
Yeah, and it can only come from the creator of truth and reality.
Perfect. Beautiful. Ustad, those are all my questions for today, and may Allah reward you for your time. It means a lot to us. But if you had any, any concluding thoughts or any advice to young Muslims, then it's all yours.
Jazakallah khair for having me on, and Jazakumullah khairah for all the viewers who are watching. But just a message that I always give youth. I was an Islamic school teacher for a few years. I taught high school students, and I've spoken at MSAs, high school MSAs before, and I tell them the same thing, that you're living in very challenging times, and a lot of odds are stacked against you, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. And honestly, some of the stuff that youth are going through today, I didn't go through. My parents didn't go through. So you're living in uniquely challenging times. But the good news is, and the reason to be optimistic and have hope, is that Allah chose you to live in this time because He knew that you would be able to and have the capability and the capacity to overcome and to pass these challenges and succeed and and achieve this kind of tawfiq, this divinely ordained success. So we always have to be hopeful and optimistic in the promise of Allah. We always have to turn back to Him and make tawbah, make istighfar, seek His forgiveness, recognize that it's not about me, nafsi, I'm great, I'm perfect, people need to put respect on my name or anything like that. We are all slaves to Allah. We have to recognize our status as lowly creatures and creations of Allah. We have to turn to Him for forgiveness and love Him, and inshallah He'll love us as well.
Ustad, may Allah reward you for everything. Jazakumullah khairan.
Barakallahu feekum. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.